Welcome, travelers, to episode 24 of the Time Travel Trio podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Hyde.
And we're
the Time Travel Trio.
So, Hyde, what did you choose for us today?
I chose A Sound of Thunder.
Dun, dun, dun,
Ooh, yeah.
Nice.
It came out in 2005.
Good old 2005.
To the prime time. Directed by Peter Hymas, who you may remember for directing the kind of different sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey called 2010. Yeah.
I didn't know that existed. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, there are books for it, and I guess they had to make a movie out of it because why not?
Why not, right?
Yeah.
And this is actually based off a short story by Ray Bradbury. It's actually a very good short story. I've read it.
Is it called A Sound of Thunder?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually like Ray Bradbury. I haven't read this short story, but I love the Fahrenheit 451. That's my favorite book.
It was adapted for the screen by Thomas Dean Donnelly and about 4 other writers.
It's a lot of people who wrote a really bad movie. But
yeah, well, that
we'll
actually
get
might
into that,
explain
but
why the script
too many.
It has so many problems
Yeah.
because he didn't have a lot of people. Despite, spoiler alert, this is not a good movie.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this last podcast on Excellent Dates of Future Past I was not thinking this movie was good when I chose it. I chose it because I know it's not a great movie.
But it will be interesting to get into the time travel of this.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
so the description for this movie, when a scientist sent back to the prehistoric era strays off the path, he causes a chain of events that alters history in disastrous ways. I think that's a poor description
Yeah.
because he's not the one who strays off the path.
Although in the original short story, I was looking into it before, that is what happens. Eccles, the guy that's in the movie too, he runs off of the path and then gets back onto it. In this movie, he just somehow steps on a butterfly that's flying around.
No,
It's
Eccles
not- it's not even Eccles
isn't
who
the
does
one
it.
who does. It's the other guy.
It's the trick
Oh, it's the other guy,
audience.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
they trick the audience because Eccles in the story does it, and he's the most nervous. So they kind of do a red herring on
Right.
the audience to make you think.
And I don't think you can really say it causes a chain of events that alters history. It's just time waves that consistently come and change history. It's not like a chain of. I wouldn't say that would be a chain of events necessarily.
Yeah,
It-
it's very strange. The movie stars a lot of big names. Actually,
Yeah, I was surprised.
Edward Burns, Ben Kingsley, Captain McCormick, and some people before they became big, like David Oyelowo.
Who it's so funny to see him in this movie because
is.
he's such an Oscar caliber actor now that
Right.
it's what does he do anyway?
But
Yeah,
then again, Ben Kingsley's in there, hamming it
know.
up with this really weird white wig.
yeah.
So
I mean, he's doing his thing.
Didn't even recognize Ben Kingsley.
Yeah,
to be
I'll-
honest with you.
Yeah, at first I was like, wait, isn't Ben Kingsley in this? Oh, that is Ben Kingsley.
Yeah.
Just disappears into roles.
I think I mentioned this at the end when we were talking about this on the X-Men podcast, but Jemima Rooper, who
yes.
plays Jenny, is also in it. She, I know her from a BBC, I want to say it's a BBC miniseries called Lost in Austin. Really good, by the way, if you like Jane Austen. But anyway, totally different thing.
But yeah, no, I mean, there's some high caliber people in this movie. They clearly attracted people too. I mean, it's a Ray Bradbury short.
Yeah.
And I will say, before we get too much into it, I will say, I think for the most part, even with the terrible script and the lines they're giving, the acting's pretty decent. For a movie of this type, the acting's not horrible. I've just watched a lot of Sci-Fi Channel original movies where the acting is unbearably bad.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Kingsley looks, he's acting like he normally does. It's not a bad performance from him.
But it does feel like they all kind of phoned it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Interesting fact, this was nominated for 4 awards. For Stinker Awards, I've never heard of the Stinker Awards, but apparently they exist. Worst sense of direction, and then in parentheses it says stop them before they direct again. Worst supporting actor, most intrusive musical score, and least special effects.
Yep.
The special effects are awful.
The green screen
Oh my god.
in this movie is so distractingly horrible. Maybe one of the worst I've ever seen.
Literally, okay, I believe the future they created, these cars, it looks believable in 40 years. But it looks like a video game. It looks like they're walking through a video game.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. There's
on a
no
weird, moving sidewalk in a green screen.
There's no. It's lit completely differently. They're lit different than how whatever they're playing on the green screen is lit, and so it's very apparent that they're obviously not there. But it's just blatantly two people walking slowly in front of a green screen. It's just like terrible.
It's also convenient that they went back to the same dinosaur more than once because they can just reuse that same visual effects.
Yeah,
It's,
and not that it was great to begin with. But anyway, okay, so let's we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but before we play the trailer, did you like this movie?
Well, I saw this movie the first time I ever saw this movie, it was I was working on some sort of project in college, and it was like on Sci-Fi Channel. And it was just like kind of, I love, like whenever I'm like just trying to really focus on work, but I kind of want something in the background, I love turning on something like Sci-Fi Channel Saturdays. Because it's these terrible movies that do have some sort of like kitsch value in a weird way, like they're guilty pleasures.
But there are some more recent sci-fi movies that are decent.
Yeah. And it's like every once in a while you'll get this gem.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie had a lot of big names in it, so I thought maybe this will be one of their gems, and it wasn't.
No.
So I knew walking into this I was not going to like the movie. So,
Yeah.
Wait, so this was released in theaters, right?
It was.
Okay, so it was like released in theaters and then downgraded to a Sci-Fi original channel movie.
Well, no,
kind
it
of.
just
like
was on
that,
Sci-Fi.
I know, but that caliber, it's like, you know
Yes.
what, now you're going to just be on Sci-Fi. That's where you belong.
Right.
What's interesting is
Yeah.
if it was a sci-fi original movie, it probably would have been better.
Yeah, that's actually true.
I think it's interesting. But do you know what? I didn't hate this movie until like probably halfway through. And I didn't
Right.
even like hate it. I think hate is a strong word because you kind of know from the beginning that this is just not a good movie.
Right.
It's not it doesn't feel like it's trying to be a good movie. So
Like,
you're just
yeah.
kind of like, okay, I get what you are. But like the first half I was like, yeah, it's not that bad. Like,
Right,
this
right.
is fine. And then it kind of
And then Time Wave started to happen.
then there's time waves and all this nonsense and the dinosaur gorillas, and we'll get into it. But Matt, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. So we usually watch the movie separately, but Jen and I watched this movie together
Yeah.
because we just watched it earlier today. And so together we were both like, okay, I'm not on board anymore. So similar reaction as you, Jen. Like once Time Wave started to happen, like I mean, it's obviously different from Men in Black 3, but even that, when they had a time wave come through when he was traveling through time, I was like, no, you can't have a wave of time come through and change things. And now it's happening more than once in like incremental.
And like in this, at least in Men in Black 3, it was like
It was during the
when
one
it
travel.
happened, it like made sense.
Right.
But like in these, it's like a 24-hour delay for literally no reason. Anyway,
Right.
okay, we'll
It
get
just
into
happens when
And
it's
it-
meaning to the plot.
It changed like first vegetation and then animals and then last will be us being turned into fish monsters.
It's like the movie The Fifth Wave. It's like that idea. Okay, let's play the trailer and then kind of talk about it.
We're taking you back 65 million years to hunt the greatest predator the world has ever seen. Today, on this hunt, someone will die. The prey or the hunters. There is no middle ground.
Remember, whatever happens, do not step off of the path. We've got a major problem here.
The whole of time has been turned upside down. What happened has to be connected to our last jump. We must have changed something.
And what did you change?
We don't know. Somebody stepped off the path.
The changes in evolution that you affected come in ripples like dropping a stone into a pond. You start with climate, then vegetation, the early manifestations of life.
What was that?
Then come the more complex organisms.
You have to. Have to what? Set things right. I'll find a way.
Oi. Okay, I just have to say this now before we dissect. How like someone literally made the decision to say, no, he can literally step on a butterfly and that's what causes all this. Not just the metaphor of step on a butterfly,
right, like not just
change the future.
Right.
It's literally he stepped on a butterfly. If you watch this trailer, you can see the bottom of his shoe, there's a butterfly. Like, I just can't.
A perfectly preserved.
Like
butterfly.
here's the thing
Yeah.
too. It's like first of all, just the actual like application of it. It looks like he stepped on a clay butterfly and it like hardened to his shoe. Like he took more than one step,
Yeah,
and it should have been
it's not a
smushed.
soft, like, delicate butterfly, like how butterflies actually are. It's like
It's like clay.
Part of his shoot, like, oh gosh.
And like this is okay. Before we really get into how it is inconsistent, like the area that they're in, a volcano explodes. The volcano would have killed that butterfly anyways. Literally, like
Right.
we see the volcano explode during one of the trips, and it would have killed the butterfly.
Right.
So why does it even matter that he stepped on it?
Yeah.
I mean, but obviously the movie doesn't address it. But that's just my biggest.
But it's true because the movie does make a point of saying, which is actually one of the stronger points of the movie during the first half of it.
I agree. Yeah.
That the whole idea is that they're taking on these game safaris, but it's really to just find out genetic information. It's like research trips under the guise of exploration.
Right. Like they find a dinosaur that was going to die anyways, and that's the one they kill right when he was going to die, regardless of them being there.
It doesn't change anything. It doesn't affect like population size. They choose an area that gets covered in a volcano and kills everything anyway. So even if, in theory, even if you went off the path a little bit or killed something, nothing catastrophic should happen.
Yeah. That's,
yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's why it's a metaphor in time travel to say step on a butterfly in the past and you change the future, whatever the saying is.
Or
But-
the butterfly effect is a butterfly flaps its wings and it creates a hurricane. And then with time travel, that's that.
Yeah, but like
idea too.
it's that idea. So, but you can't literally step on a butterfly and create that much drastic change. Like
Right.
what
Well-
you're saying, it just logically it doesn't really make sense,
Yeah.
and it's very unbelievable.
Yeah, so that's my first gripe. But actually, on that note of changing things, we have a clip of them explaining kind of. But this is before they take. I think they're
Second expedition.
Yeah,
So-
it's the agents that are going, right.
Yeah, these two agents who are government agents who are just
The
kind
time
of bored
agents.
and they want to like have some fun in the past. And something important to say is like the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
The way it goes in this movie is it's an expedition, so they pay, these people pay for basically big game safari hunts,
Yeah.
and they go back in time, and they kind of played up to the people paying all this money that they're getting to like do something different, that they're getting to like be these heroes, but it's all scripted pretty much.
Yeah.
It all like takes them onto the same path, and it just makes them feel like they're doing something like really dangerous.
Yeah, it's the same dinosaur they keep killing over and over again. Or I think at least at this point, they're researching this dinosaur, so they keep going back and killing the same one over and over again, which is an issue with duplication. But we'll get into that later on.
Yeah.
Right.
So here's the clip.
Second rule of time jumping. Don't leave anything behind.
Ow! Not another. I'm getting track marks.
It's the third rule of time jumping. Don't bring anything back.
Okay, that's number 2 and 3. What's rule number 1?
No matter what. No matter how small. Never change anything in the past. Nothing. You kill a bee, and maybe the flower it was going to pollinate doesn't grow. And the seeds it was going to spread don't get spread. And the animal that was going to eat the vegetation doesn't have the food to eat, and it dies. And it was carrying the genes for a new kind of animal which doesn't get to occur. And it alters the course of evolution. A single beat. And the farther back you go, the more catastrophic any changes could be. So, rule number 1?
Don't change anything.
Of course, he's the one who does change something
Right.
because, boy, this movie. There's.
Well,
it's-
he doesn't. Eccles doesn't. In the movie Red Herring.
Oh, I thought that was the other
I
guy.
can't tell them apart.
I
Okay,
You
literally
can't tell
can't
them
tell the
apart.
difference.
The guy who's always nervous,
Okay.
he's the guy that the movie tries to trick you into thinking he's going to mess
Okay.
up. But it's actually his like big
Okay.
bravado guy, friend,
Okay.
who's the one who steps off the
I
path.
literally couldn't tell the difference.
Like
Yeah.
they look the exact same.
They
They
do.
do look really. It would have worked a lot better to like make someone like a different ethnicity or something.
Yeah.
'cause they're
Yeah.
just way too.
There's so many old white men in this movie.
Yeah,
that look
middle-aged white
identical.
guys with short brown hair. That's
And the women are such objects. Like, it's so obviously a male written script.
Right.
It's so male heavy, like male white guy heavy. Like when
It's really bad.
when David Oyelowo's character was like the first one to kind of be cut
Kill.
off from the team, you're like, oh, it's so obvious. You're
Right.
like, obviously they felt like they had to. Why couldn't he have lived long? You know, it's just was.
It doesn't also make sense. I mean, well, on the one hand, it does make sense that he would be the first person to kill off because he's the most well trained as like a fighter. Like he's the one who actually like controls the guns and the weaponry. But at
oh
the
yeah, the
same,
engineer.
but at the same time, it's like it doesn't really make sense in that situation because his character still has a lot to offer the storyline, plot wise. If you were writing it, if it was a better script, you'd want the action hero to stay along because then you want really good action scenes.
Yeah.
Not the one, you don't keep the guy, the scientist who just like rigged everyone up for that long, because what's he going to do? His character all of a sudden switches into a David Oyelowo character, or all of a sudden he
can break into a car and hijack a car. That's something that David, his character can do.
Like, it's like his character literally just takes all David Oyelowo's traits that apparently his character had, and they just take it. Also, the reason the guns even don't work is the dumbest reason ever. Because it's like the lone black janitor.
Yeah, right. Some asshole was clumsy and literally destroyed humanity.
Spilled some nitrogen on the gun.
That is the premise of this movie.
Yeah, and one of the top scientists sees this person make a mistake and doesn't even bother to check to be like, oh, is something broken? Like, part of my job is making sure students check out camera equipment at a university. And if someone were to drop a tripod or like a camera case or a lens kit in front of me, my first reaction would be to go over and make sure. And that's on something that's worth like a couple $1,000s. She literally doesn't have the time to be bothered with this guy dropping the most important, like one of the most important aspects of their expedition right in front of her.
Yeah, it was so male written. It was male written. If it was written by a woman, she would have been smart and she would have, either inspected that and hadn't noticed the gun, maybe. Yeah. That at least, come on.
Yeah. Well, they say, he did inspect the gun, but the problem is it wasn't shorted out until after they left on the expedition, so it was damaged, but it wasn't unusable until they already went on the trip. He said,
which is ridiculous.
Yeah, but I mean, at least they gave David Oyelowo's character like a long, prolonged death where he was unnecessarily long, and they just watched him run. Don't just sit there and watch him.
Everett Burton's watches David Oyelowo.
He's like, no, hold on, I have to see this
for way too long. And then when his adopted sister Jenny, I guess we could call her, the other girl, is killed, he literally says zero
doesn't even
about
react.
it. He has no reaction.
No reaction.
I'm this is someone who you're supposed is your sister. Basically,
he makes a point to say, "I'm going to protect you," or "I'm going to take care of you." Early in the movie when they're walking through the green screen city, and I promise your dad or whatever, I'm going to take care of you or something like that. And it doesn't even care.
Doesn't register because at that point the writers were like, "Well, now he's with the woman that we want him to bone." So
yeah, it's literally just everyone else gets killed off except for the scientist woman and him because oh god.
I mean she gets turned into a fish monster.
Literally, okay, I have to say this. When Matt and I were watching this, and we knew when it was the last wave was coming that's gonna, change humanity or whatever, he was like, what did you say? You were like, I
hope she turns into a fish monster.
And then literally she turned into a fish monster. Not even kidding. It was absolutely absurd.
The reason why I made that prediction, because they were like, oh, I hope it don't have fins or whatever. That's the joke they made offhandedly. And I was like, well, at least they delivered on that promise.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's no subtlety in the script.
Right. No.
And once they say something, the writers are probably it's clever because she said she doesn't want to have fins, so we give her fins. And and we all high-five each other.
Yeah, this movie the movie has no subtlety. That's a
how
good way
did someone, how many, this is what astounds me about bad movies. How many people read this script, said it was good, made these changes to the scripts, and someone paid for this to be made.
Warner Brothers is behind the distribution of this film.
How many people went through this and still thought it was a good idea? Stuff like that blows my mind.
It's really strange because it's also just there's just so many missed opportunities. The Ray Bradbury short story based on it's a really good short story.
Does it end where this movie, the first act ends, where they realize he changed something and then he gets shot and that's the end of the short story, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Ray Bradbury was also a lot more morose usually with his short stories. So, I totally understand you have to change it and make a way that he can fix the problem. Otherwise, it's not a very exciting movie.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it's for instance, going back to the David Oyelowo versus the Jenny scene where they get killed.
Mm-hmm.
It's his character. I understand it was the first step, everyone being really shaken up and being but then someone being well, if we change everything, it will be okay.
Yeah, he mentioned that. Okay, if we fix it, doesn't matter.
Right. So if I'm writing the script, this is just me thinking offhand.
Mm-hmm.
what you do is you then have Jin be the first person who gets killed. Because that's the most important person to
I
him.
agree.
So now there's a motivation as he's doing this. It's like, not only is it screw, like, the person I promised to protect, I failed to protect.
Yeah.
So now I gotta make this
She
right.
also has no purpose in the team, honestly.
She doesn't.
There's no point. The only reason she's there is because of him.
And she records the videos on the expedition.
But they're not recording a video.
Yeah, in the present day, she's just there to be there.
Be obnoxious.
Yeah, and I guess technically he grabs her at the end and he says, like, hey, later, give me the video, and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's kind of like, we just had to give her something to do to bring this full circle.
Yeah, I mean, she should have died the first person that... She should have been hit by the plant and then, with the monkeys.
Yeah.
Because, like, the monkey raptors are... I guess
monkey
gorilla
raptors.
raptors. Yeah, the
Who
raptors. But yeah, it should have been her because then he would have
Yeah.
cared more, and then she'd be like, "No, fix it," and then I won't be dead in the real way. Then it would have had a moment where like he sees her again and says, "No, give it to me," like because you would feel it
You
more.
resonated more.
And then David Oyelowo could hijack the car because that's what he does. He's an engineer.
Yeah,
Instead
no one
of
cares
this,
about the nameless scientist.
instead of a doctor who like made he
nameless
paid
doctor,
he
whatever
paid
it
his
is.
way through college by hijacking cars.
Yeah, that was the weirdest line.
Weird,
Like,
so strange.
how do you think I paid my way through college?
I was like, I don't know.
What?
You stole
cars? Merit-based scholarships? Since you're really smart,
Yeah,
I
right?
would imagine you had some sort of academic help.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, now we just know you're a criminal.
This movie is the definition of, like, convenience of plot. So, like, everything, like, most plot points that happen are, like, convenience for the sake of the plot, not stuff that, like, you logically think should make sense in this world.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest problems.
So, obviously there are problems with the movie. I want to talk about the time travel of it, how they end up there, the problem with the duplication, the changing stuff. And we have a clip of... So this is after they've messed with time, and this is the doctor lady, or the scientist lady, who actually created the software to do the time travel, is explaining how they can fix it.
Right.
I have an idea of how to get you back. It's never been tried, but it might work. We can't break through the rings, but in theory, I should be able to open a wormhole further back on the other side of the ripples. Instead of 65 million years, you go back 65 million and one. It would be like jumping over the rings like this.
And then what? Travis waits for him?
No, back here, whatever change you affected hasn't happened yet, so there are no time waves blocking you. I should be able to slingshot you forward to the target zone.
I don't know if I like should. You're not sure?
Well, I'm fairly certain. The only thing is, I wouldn't try intercepting the party to turn them back.
Why not?
Well, the slingshot effect will use up all your energy. Your window will be small and highly unstable. You won't have long enough to explain to them what you're doing, let alone convince them.
Well, how much time will I have?
I can't say for certain. 15, 20 seconds.
Can you say anything for certain?
Okay. Well, he definitely had like 3 minutes when we actually see
Yeah.
him go, but
So their whole idea of this time travel is that they open up a wormhole, and this like hover path kind of
my
extends
God.
from the wormhole.
I genuinely laughed out loud when they're like going through this rocky, machine.
Yeah, they're like this like glowy tube, and they're all strapped in.
They're all strapped in and like they can't move. And then the wormhole opens, and it's just this like pleasant
just stroll
walkway,
through.
and they just stroll out of it. And like even when they come back the other way, if they like jump through the wormhole to get there in time, they still like come out strapped in.
Well, we actually see more of it when he gets slingshotted in that scene afterwards. He jumps out of it. He unstraps and jumps out onto the pathway, I think.
Right.
So I don't know how they make the pathway, but they go back to the same dinosaur over and over again. And there's no duplication. They can keep killing it, and it's fine.
Right.
But then when he does go back there with a slingshot, they're there. So it's like, you can't just pick and choose when you duplicate things.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because they go back to the same time with different groups, like dozens, hundreds of times. We don't know how many times, but they go back to the exact same place. So there should be hundreds of people standing there.
Yeah.
Duplicates of them, but there's only the one that they need to be there that's there. It doesn't make sense.
Like maybe you could say, because it's a different wormhole or it's like a different machine, but like you can't just like that's inconsistent rules.
Right.
Yeah.
It would have made a lot more sense if what they did is instead of like duplication necessarily, the whole like event is a simulation. And quote unquote, it looks real because it is real, but they're seeing what they've already recorded. Because then that gives Jin's character some importance and all that jazz.
That's actually something that I wrote down, too, similarly. is that, like, why couldn't they just have an advanced virtual reality experience and just tell them that it's time travel?
Right.
Because to us, the special effects in this movie are really terrible, but
Right,
if they've invented time travel, they can create that type of world that's a safe environment.
It'd save a lot of money instead of having to create a wormhole every time.
Right, and the rules are already there in place. Like, they can't fire until Edward Burns' character fires.
Mhm.
Like, you can make it do, and then all you have to do to really screw it up is that you have the machine malfunction. It actually sends them back in time.
Yeah.
And then when they are back in time, instead of being in a simulation, they're like, oh, and then they make a mistake.
I agree. Like, they turned off the whatever thing that was supposed to be on, and it wasn't on.
Right, there's a lot of just, like you said, like, this is the definition of a convenience plot. Like, they don't get, their biosuits don't get scrubbed because their suits don't get properly scrubbed because Ben Kingsley's character turned it off. Which, getting bio-scrubbed in space, or even when you're coming up from, like, deep water diving or something of that nature, like, you're being scrubbed. You would also know if you weren't being scrubbed.
Yeah.
Like, this dude literally, like, they go to these people's houses, which is, I'm pretty sure the next day. They go to these people's houses, and they still have the boots with, like, prehistoric dirt.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense why these people would keep the clothes. Why wouldn't they keep the clothes at Time Safari? It didn't make sense.
Right, like, are they just taking their boots with them? Like, are they wearing their boots? Like, I know you have to really think about that, because, like, if someone ships you with an outfit for something, like, when you go bowling, you are given shoes.
Yeah.
Bowling
and
for
I'm pretty
butterflies.
sure for a Time Safari where if you step on something, and especially in this universe where stepping on a butterfly will literally create ape monsters, like, I feel like they would provide you your shoes and, like, a clean suit.
Maybe it's so expensive that, like, you know what, you gotta keep the outfit too for a keepsake of your Time Safari. You gotta, you gotta keep it.
Yeah, maybe the patch. Maybe you get to keep the patch.
Yeah, the patch.
Maybe you get a shot glass that says Time Safari.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I killed a T-Rex and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
I feel like if they're doing the same thing and they're trying to, play it off like everyone gets a different experience, there's only so many super wealthy people in Chicago, I guess, where they are. Like, would they not talk to each other? Like, is it really that unbelievable that two rich people would say to each other, oh, we did this.
I
Oh my
killed an
gosh,
Allosaurus, so did I.
We did the same thing. That's weird. They're totally screwing us.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just...
Which is weird, too, because this also implies that going back in time is not cool unless you get to actually kill a dinosaur. Like, no one's, like, impressed. Yeah. Like, the guy's, like, sitting out there. He just traveled 65 million years. He's walking around, like, untouched Earth. And he's like, oh, I'm not getting to shoot anything. I'm like, yeah, but you're 65 million years in the past. Like, that's not cool enough for you, bro?
Yeah. It's like... yeah, it is a little ridiculous, isn't it? How obnoxious all the wealthy clients are, that they just, I don't know, like the guy who does end up stepping on the butterfly, he's such a dick, and then the other guy's like afraid. It's just, there isn't anyone real, and like just because you're wealthy, I don't know, it just was the kind of a weird commentary on the wealthy to me, that just because you're wealthy it means you're kind of an asshole and you just don't appreciate things. But I think that's kind of ridiculous.
Right. It just seems very strange. No one seems to... Well, no one in this movie acts like a real person.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is kind of... everyone is very much their stereotype or their position. Their job pretty much defines their personality.
Yeah. So I think we kind of strayed from talking about the time travel.
Oh, yeah. But, well, I wanted to talk about... So, they have a machine in the company that does it, but they also need a second machine, but that's apparently one at the university. And all they needed to... Well, there's a particle accelerator at the university, and all they needed to do was take the software, and we'll have a time machine. You can't...
Yeah, and my issue, too, like as if any place could, like, just fit the software and just
put it on a flash drive.
But, like...
After it goes through the water...
But this is what I was going to say. They're underwater for an extended period of time. There isn't, like, a part of them that's, like, holding up this hard drive above the water. They're completely... They should be completely drenched. They're not. And apparently this hard drive is perfectly fine being underwater.
So it's Chicago 2054, man. They have hard drives that are completely water resistant.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, you can't just like sure, particle accelerators can make tiny black holes, but you can't. That doesn't like just make a wormhole unless like the particle accelerator had this exotic matter that you need to do to create a wormhole.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, so many problems. So let's talk about the rules. They kind of spell out 3 rules, and they talk about them in the clips that we saw too.
Don't leave anything behind.
Don't leave anything behind. Don't bring anything back. Don't change anything. But my problem, number 1 rule, don't change anything. The fact that they're there in the first place means that they're changing something.
Right. Even on that little illuminated path.
Yeah, even in a very basic sense of, well, they're quote-unquote careful about when they kill something. It's the same, you know, whatever. But even if the very first time, if they just like saw, okay, this dinosaur dies at this time, okay, we can have 5 minutes, we can set this up here, whatever. Just the fact that they were there watching the first time and like realizing when they could go, that still is changing something because they weren't there in the original timeline.
Right.
So just the whole concept of what they're doing seems to me to kind of contradict their rules, and so it's just kind of bad news.
Well, the rules in this always apply until they don't.
Yeah.
The only rule they seem to really stick pretty hard to, which even that is murky, is that if you leave anything behind or step off the path, you're going to screw stuff up. That's really the only rule. The time waves that come out don't even have... I know you want to talk about this. The time waves don't even have a set schedule.
Yeah, they really just come for convenience of plot. Again, they come when it's convenient for the plot to have another wave of time.
Yeah, they say 24 hours, but that's only like the first 2, and then it happens at nighttime, the next several other ones. But the last one comes, she like senses it's coming. She's like, I know... time wave is coming. She's like in underground in the building. She like knows that it's gonna come.
She only knows it's gonna come because he's about to go back and try and save everything. That's obviously the only time when it would come.
By the way, it also has it also borrows from Back to the Future 3 and has a scene where he goes back to the Old West.
Yeah, and the Indians, Native Americans, like jump over him and on their horses. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, I didn't realize that was Back to the Future 3. So consequences. So I want to kind of differentiate consequences in this circumstance because physical consequences of time traveling, there are none. They come back. If everything's fine, everything's fine. They don't like feel a headache. There's nothing. There's nothing physically wrong with them.
Which does make sense because they open a wormhole. You just walk through it. Like technically, they're just walking through a wormhole, so there shouldn't be. It's not like deja vu where you're being like transmitted through energy somewhere. Like they open a wormhole, they just step through it, which makes sense. But yeah, sorry.
And then there is consequences in this movie of when they changed something. When the guy literally stepped on a butterfly. I could not get over the fact when it showed a perfectly preserved butterfly on the bottom of a shoe. They literally stepped on a butterfly, and that is this movie. And I just
in a place that would have been destroyed by a volcano. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was absurd. So scientific accuracy.
So I mean, obviously we kind of touched on it a little bit. I want to get into time waves. Okay. Because that concept is so dumb. Like, so time is the 4th dimension, let's say, right? And it's like this manifestation in 3 dimensions that's like going across the land. Mm-hmm. Like, you wouldn't be able to see it coming. It would be a 4th dimension. It wouldn't be this like wave that's going east to west, Yeah. And it's so arbitrary what it's changing. First the climate, and then vegetation, and then like small life forms.
It kind of looked like a giant tidal wave.
Right, obviously it's what they're going. Yeah. It's just.
There's no theory like this in science that the whole idea that if you threw a rock into a pond and changed, it would just ripple out, or is it like that? Except it's not that literal in the sense of like yes. You would ripple out effects, but it would all take place at one time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, the way I like to imagine it, and the way I feel like it would happen, is that, like, if you change something in the past, the future you would come back to would already be changed.
Like in X-Men Days of Future Past. Like, it's delayed because we're watching both timelines occur simultaneously, but when Logan wakes up, in his new present day in X-Men,
Right.
it's
just
everything
different
has
in the future.
changed. It's not like he slowly sees different things.
So after they changed, the first change was like the vegetation, or the climate. It was a heat wave.
It's really hot.
Like, he wakes up the next day and it's like, suddenly there's a heat wave. Like, it was just that day. Like, the next day was a change. It wasn't like a change that happened in the past. It was like, suddenly the next day things are different.
Which
in the
doesn't
future.
make sense because, like, on TV, she's like, scientists can't explain why there's such a sudden heat wave. But, like, it should have always been that way. It should have just always been hot. It doesn't make sense, like, all of a sudden, after 24 hours, realizes that it's hot.
Also, scientists can't explain a heat wave in
Yeah,
2050. I mean, it's just like, what? Like, someone would just be like, oh, well, I guess it's really hot. They'd be like, oh, well, we don't have enough cloud cover. And like, and there's literally the weather person's saying, and it's a higher level of UV. If I'm a scientist, which I am not, I'd be like, I think there's something going on with the climate.
Yeah.
It has to do with radiation getting in. That's why it's so hot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the biggest reason why we have climate is because the Earth wobbles, and in each season, the hemispheres of the Earth lean closer to the sun, so the northern hemisphere gets more heat from the sun than the southern hemisphere. That's why we get summer, and that's why Australia it's opposite because they're closer to the sun when the Earth wobbles that way.
Right.
A butterfly being changed wouldn't change the way the Earth is tilted.
Yeah.
It wouldn't,
Right. I mean, it would change vegetation. I could definitely see the vegetation if you really wanted to go with the whole theory of, like, that plant doesn't pollinate and it doesn't cause biodiversity. Sure. Yeah. Let's remove the volcano exploding and let's just get rid of that stupid plot device. And let's give them the benefit of the doubt that butterfly went on to, like, change vegetation. Okay.
Sure.
That still doesn't make
still a
sense
stretch, but
with most of the stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Like, are you telling me because this butterfly doesn't pollinate, gorillas become raptor?
and humans don't exist anymore?
Yeah, they become
That's
fish.
insane.
like
Absolutely insane.
They have a way bad understanding of evolution because, like, the reason why monkeys exist is because the asteroid killed off the dinosaurs and the mammals were able to then take over as a dominant life form. Like, a raptor wouldn't evolve into a monkey.
Right.
Like a little mouse did or something like that. You can't have a half raptor, half gorilla.
Yeah, it was.
It doesn't even.
dumb.
First of all, plus also half gorilla, half raptor doesn't even look that cool.
Yeah.
It's like, at least if you're gonna, like, make some crazy fantastical creature up, like, do one that's like
They look
cool.
like Pokemon.
Yeah.
Is what I kept saying. Like this water snake eel thing.
Yeah,
It looked like a Pokemon.
It was like a dragon eel, and actually it looks like Rayquaza, I think, who actually is a dragon that flies around, but the face was the exact same. It had like the whisker. It looked like an Asian dragon that you see like in the
like how
mythology.
Miyazaki Spirited Away.
Right,
like
yeah.
that, yeah. It's just like
There was nothing original. Just this movie in general, there wasn't really that much original, I felt like.
it doesn't. I don't understand why they made it so small. What got changed? Like,
Yeah.
why stick with the butterfly? Literally a butterfly effect. Like, why not make it something like so much more destructive?
Because they lack subtlety. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
it's like, no, use butterfly, changes everything. Like,
Yeah, that's true. The writers don't know how to be subtle with their writing in this movie because even the lines, they're cliche lines that are thrown in just because they're cliche. And like some of them just didn't even make sense when they were being said, but they were just cliche and they probably just felt like they needed to say them.
Yeah, they're probably like, butterfly, it's a subtle change, but then it changes everything. It's like, no, you can't just, like, you can't ham a metaphor in there and have it be like a literal thing.
It's frustrating to watch a movie that spends all this time and effort creating this world and these changes and whatever, but doesn't, sit and think, oh, maybe it doesn't make sense that a butterfly being stepped on literally wouldn't destroy humanity and most of the earth.
Yeah, it's just everything doesn't fall through. And I will say, when I was first watching, like we talked about, when I first saw the first half of this movie, before everything goes off course, even though it's not a good movie, I remember when I was watching, I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I remember it.
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
like I said, I mean, these are some top-tier actors. Edward Burns has one of the greatest performances of all time in Saving Private Ryan, and he's done solid work since then. And David Oyelowo is probably a future Oscar winner.
He's definitely been nominated.
No, he hasn't been nominated.
He hasn't been nominated.
He didn't get nominated for Selma. It was
Oh,
like
yeah,
a
he
big
was snubbed.
controversy.
Yeah, that's right.
But he's been nominated for Golden Globes. He's won BAFTA awards. I mean, he's a legit actor.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ben Kingsley's a very legit actor. Even Catherine McCormick's a pretty solid actress.
Yeah.
And this movie doesn't even really give lines to work with.
Yeah.
But I wasn't cringing.
Yeah, I mean,
like anything.
It isn't painful, but it's just kind of like
towards
it's like
the
baffling.
end, it gets painful. You're
Yeah,
like,
towards
why
the
is
end,
there?
right.
And when it's like, oh, why is there still 45 minutes of this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, like at one point, at one point I was watching. I rented this movie on Amazon Prime, and when it got to the point after like the first wave hit, and I realized like there was like 53 minutes still left in this movie, I was like, oh man.
Yeah,
Like,
I was right there with you.
There's a lot of this like I still got to get through.
So I think it's way too long. It should have been a sci-fi original movie. It would have been shorter. It would have been written better.
And I also think in a weird way, even though it probably would have been cornier and the special effects would have been probably worse, amazingly.
Yeah.
The thing about the Sci-Fi Channel original movies is the people doing Sci-Fi Channel original movies usually are directors or writers who want to become big-name directors or writers.
They care more about, creating a cohesive plot, I think.
Right. And they want to make it fun. Sci-Fi Channel original movies, they know they're bad, so they try really hard to make it fun.
Some of them too much, but yeah.
Yeah, true. But it's like, the actors here, all the actors, except for, I think Ben Kingsley was having a fun time playing the part. But I think all the other actors were just like, I need a paycheck.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
I just need something to hold me over for a while and like get my name on like a major release movie.
Yep.
And like, because Sci-Fi Channel original movie actors, they're just happy to be working. Usually.
Yeah.
So they're like really giving it their all.
Whoa, the budget for this movie.
The budget was $52 million? That can't be right.
Well, it made $1 million of it back.
It made...
sorry, that was opening weekend.
Opening weekend, it made 1.1. It grossed 1.8. And it was $52 million? That's insane.
No wonder the director has not really done anything since this.
Yeah.
Jen noticed this during the movie. The agents, the department, the time.
I wrote it down. Their temporal regulation division, literally turd.
TRD.
They're turd.
Their jackets had turd on the back.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was. Ugh.
So this is interesting. Rennie Harlan was fired from the production because he made a creative decision that made Ray Bradbury very unhappy, and the film producers decided to support Ray Bradbury. So that may explain the $52 billion budget.
Yeah.
Because Rennie Harlan has made, even though Rennie Harlan's also been responsible for some major flops, Rennie Harlan has a more consistent track record. He's done really fun B-movies like Deep Blue Sea.
Okay.
So maybe that's why this movie had such a giant budget. Maybe something happened and then they had to like just... Maybe this was like one of those kind of like, we spent so much money on this movie so it has to be released, but we're going to bury this.
Yeah.
So that maybe the director was kind of brought onto a failed project. So maybe we're being
Apparently
too
it
hard.
was spoofed in a Doctor Who episode. What?
Really?
That's interesting. But, yeah, I just think, oh my god, yeah. Martha asks what will happen if she steps on a butterfly and changes the future, making the doctor ask what she's got against butterflies. I mean, that's not necessarily a reference.
I mean, yeah, that's just a reference to the metaphor, I guess.
Anyway, so... Okay,
I mean,
we talked about accuracy.
Yeah, there is one little thing I liked about it. At the end, when he does stop him from stepping on the butterfly, he disappears.
Right.
Because then that's when he changed something. That's one thing I was like, okay, he disappeared because he stopped them from stepping on the butterfly. That made sense.
Yeah.
That was like the only part of the thing that was consistent, I guess, at least from a time travel rules perspective.
Right, because that timeline no longer exists.
Right.
One of my favorite quotes, and by favorite I mean awful, Eccles says it's awfully expensive about this trip, and his friend says, what's the point of being rich if you don't buy things other people can't afford?
Yes, I remember that one. It's like, okay.
Wow. Also, apparently the butterfly that he stepped on at the end, when we see it, it's actually a moth.
They couldn't
even get a butterfly correct.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
This is awful.
Okay, so we talked about scientific accuracy. Obviously, it's relevant to the story. It is the story. So at least there's that.
It's relevant whenever it needs to be.
It's relevant when it needs to be, but it is like, the central idea of the movie. So there is that. Clothes and sets, there's no difference 2005 and 2054
54.
are the same clothes.
Clothes-wise, yeah, but the city, it looks believable. It looks like I can see that being 40 years from now. Like the cars don't look that futuristic. They don't have flying cars. They have like a jet helicopter kind of thing that looks like a believable thing. The buildings look like they're just built up buildings from the present day. So I mean, I believe the city. I just wish it wasn't like a video game.
Right, it does look like a video game, and even video games are making better customs.
Yeah, sorry, video games 10 years ago.
Yeah,
you know,
when the movie was made.
This movie's not a time travel movie, so we'll never cover it on the show. But one of the movies that had like a perfect like view of like what future technology would look like in like about 2050 or so, and it looks like they actually might get this right, is iRobot. Because Minority Report, like they've rebuilt these whole new highways, which is really cool. But in iRobot, literally the infrastructure is almost exactly the same. It's just that now with cars, you can decide, I want to drive my car or I want the car to drive for me. Like, clothes are like a little bit different. Everything's like a little bit different material and like sleeker. But Will Smith also has like the Converse, and he's like, oh, these are vintage Converse. Like, and as corny and as stupid as that might sound, saying it out loud, it makes sense for world building. Like, it made sense. Like, okay, I get that Will Smith was wearing slightly older clothes, but he's basically just a hipster in this movie. Yeah. So at least this movie makes no attempt to think about that. Other than the most thought they put into production design outside of like the 3D rendered city is that
the guns.
And the guns.
Yeah, and the ice bullets or whatever they have.
The ice bullets, yeah. Is the Edward Burns has a but that's like kind of like a prop note. Like there's a production note where there's Chicago Cubs, like they've won the World Series twice. Which like 2022 and like 2047 or something like that. But it's like, of course, because Chicago and it's the future, and everyone always has to have their favorite sports team.
What were you going to say about Edward Burns, though?
No, I'm just saying like that's the only production note that's the only production design note where they thought about, oh, this is a future world. Everything else looks exactly the same interior wise, as you would expect it to.
Yeah. So, would you want to experience this time travel? I'm going to pass. I don't think it's worth it. All you're doing is going on one path, doing the same thing. It's like not... Yeah, I mean, it's cool, as you said, to be that far in a past, but if stepping on a butterfly is that much of a drastic... I don't know, I just don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't want to be in this world at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no.
Yeah, the whole world just feels...
It felt 12 Monkeys-ish a little bit.
Yeah. Like very dirty just the whole time. Like nothing felt very clean.
Plants growing and everything.
The city is ravaged by nature again, and these monkeys, monkey raptors are after them.
Yeah. Did you guys have any other notes, stuff we haven't talked about?
Did not like the whole vibe they put on, the unnecessary vibe that like Jen wanted to have sex with Edward Burns' character. It just felt so unnecessary. And like, look, he's already sleeping with this one woman. Then he has a scientist doctor who obviously they have a thing. And now you're going to make his like adopted sister want to like have sex with him? Like, why?
Because the writers are living vicariously through their lead character and want to make him a sex symbol because they want to be sex symbols. You
could just tell Edward Burns, like, especially like when he had to do the scenes with Jen, like, and it would get flirtatious. You could just tell Edward Burns wasn't into it, and he's just like, I imagine Edward Burns at one point is like, what's my motivation for the scene? Like, and he's like, oh, she wants to have sex with you, and you don't. And he's just like, I don't even understand why she wants to have sex with me. None of this makes sense. Like, even though it's a trope, I totally get that he and the lead female scientist had to have sexual tension. It's dumb as it is, and as much people hate on it, sometimes it adds stakes to the movie, but they don't really even use it to add stakes to the movie.
Yeah, I didn't like how they tried to just discreetly mention that there was a virus that wiped out a lot of the animals.
Yeah. Like animals in the wild is a thing that they don't have anymore.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to me. They can just be studying dinosaurs to study dinosaurs, not because they're trying to find out. I don't know, it just was such a weird subplot that was never explained, never gone into. Like, what the hell is this virus even from? It has nothing to do with anything else that they're doing.
Right. I mean, again, another missed opportunity. When I first saw the film, I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, like, this is me kind of, like, mixing what I'm thinking about it now, but also what I first thought when I saw this film. When I first saw the film, I was like, oh, he's going to go back in time, and when he changes stuff, I actually thought that I didn't know what the movie was about when I watched it, so I actually thought that his character was going to go AWOL or something, or go off the rails, like because he was going to find something. Because he seemed like he was a very obsessed scientist.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh, he's going to find a way that he can save the animals, but by doing so, he's going to create more problems.
That
Which would have been interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Or what could have happened was when he goes back and he fixes the past, he still makes some sort of minor change that somehow solves the animal crisis.
Yeah.
But nothing like that happens, and he's going to have to shut down his research. So
yeah, so maybe it is a side effect of them traveling. We don't know how far back that they started this time travel thing, so maybe them going in the first place did affect, the animals somehow. I don't know. So maybe if they destroy it, then it fixes it, but yeah, that's kind of a big unexplained thing that just gets brushed aside. The slutty girl from Love Actually is still a slutty girl in this movie. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the girl who comes to his apartment.
Yeah. She's literally the exact same character in Love Actually. Yeah.
They had bat pterodactyls, kind of.
Ugh.
Like bat dactyls.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking through my notes. Volcano, blah blah blah. I think most of the stuff we talked about.
I mean, there's tons of like really weird, just totally like, why is this scene in there? I also really did not like the fact that the city still more or less looks like a city, even with all like the stuff like changed. Like it just like, oh, there's more vegetation.
Yeah,
like what?
The time waves affect what's currently there as if it's like being pushed upon it, not as if it's been changed from the beginning. It's like this city exists, and then suddenly there's plants that are thrust on it. Like, if it actually was being changed as it is, coming from that change, it would be drastically different.
And everyone still has those memories. Like this is newly happening to every single person on Earth.
Right. How cool would it have been when they come out of the thing, everything's changed, but like the building itself, because of how it's been retrofitted, is like safe. But everything else around has been modified because, like, okay, we have like and I would have bought it. Like, we have the technology to basically shield our building from any temporal changes.
Yeah, and they come out, and to everyone else, it's just how the world is now. But to them, it's been different because they weren't there when it changed. They were like, "Oh, what the hell happened to our world?"
They just needed it felt like they just needed them to go on an adventure outside of the building for like half the movie.
Yeah,
just to have something to do.
It's really strange.
Like, search for these guys' clothes.
There's just this weird stuff, like the scene where he's at the doctor's greenhouse, and then the woman gets like eaten by the bugs. Those bugs never make a return, even though they're clearly the most dangerous thing like out there. Maybe more dangerous, arguably, than the ape raptors. And he jumps. Their solution is to jump out the window, and then they even make a point to say this tree was not here before. I'm like, so you're just gonna jump 10 stories?
That's
that
what
was your
I
big
said. Oh my god, that's what I said. I was like, so you were gonna avoid being killed by jumping out of a window to be killed? It didn't make sense.
What? Like, we just like, screw it. I don't want to get eaten by bugs, so I'm just gonna jump and kill myself that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, I would have been at that point. If it's like jump 10 stories or like try to run across the bugs, I'm choosing running across the bugs.
Yeah.
Like
get a flamethrower or something and just, make a pathway and run.
Yeah. Like those bugs are huge. They can't climb up walls. I mean, they're like huge bugs.
Yeah.
Just also the time travel agent who's like supposed to be there to like monitor if they do something wrong. He for some reason decides to stay in there and then decides not to come with them. Then he leaves his safe spot and then gets eaten. And it's just like, what?
He's hiding in there because there's gorillas sleeping on the ceiling, which, what?
Like bats?
Okay.
Like upside down?
That was ridiculous. And then
how'd they even get in?
And then he's like, wait, don't leave me. And I'm like, you just told them that you didn't want, it just didn't make sense. And so I'm like, you deserve to be eaten because you're like, wait, don't leave me. Or they were like, come with us. And you were like, no. And then he was like, wait, don't leave me. And went after them, and then he died. And I'm like, yeah, you deserve to die.
Right, it's
like
such
an idiot.
The screenwriters were trying way too hard to give him, he deserved to die. And I'm like, or you could have just had it being why not just have him come back and he's already
And he's already dead.
What?
Ben Kingsley was already dead.
Or have him get eaten by the snake thing instead of Jen.
Yeah. Any other notes that we didn't talk about? I think we went through all of them.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything
that
I noticed.
Cool. So, final reviews. Movie rating. Matt, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, this movie just wasn't that great. I mean, I didn't hate it outright. It just wasn't smart. It was not subtle. It just, I don't know. I'll never see it again. Hopefully you saw it for the podcast, but if you did, I'm sorry, I guess. If you haven't seen it, I don't recommend it, I guess. We covered pretty much everything you needed to do. Read the short story instead by Ray Bradbury. I give it a 2. Yeah. Give it a 2.
I agree. If for some reason you thought that this would be a really good movie for us to cover, I apologize if you watched it for the first time.
Well, it was a good movie for us to cover.
No, I mean like a good movie in general
Right,
that
right.
we would be covering, not a good movie for us to cover. Yeah, so I agree. I apologize if we watched this movie excited and ended up disappointed. We didn't make it. We're just talking about it, so it's not our fault. But yeah, I didn't hate this movie. I didn't like it. I don't want to see it ever again for the rest of my entire life.
Yeah.
But the beginning isn't that bad, and there are decent actors in this movie. So I think I'll agree. I guess I'll give it a 2 out of 10.
Yeah, I was like between 2 and a 3, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fine. with
Yeah,
the 2.
I'm with you. The problem is it doesn't work as a good movie, and it doesn't work as a bad movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
fun or exciting enough to be a bad movie.
Yeah, I think that's why. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, there's some movies, like Project Almanac is so bad it's almost kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like, it's like kind of comical, but this one wasn't like necessarily comical bad. It's not comical bad. It's not comical bad enough because no one seems like they're trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Or like, at least, what I mean by that is no one seems like they're trying to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to watch like a great sci-fi channel caliber movie, like in this kind of scale, that's really good and really fun. See the Puppet Masters, like Donald Sutherland's in it, Donnie Wahlberg's in it. It's a movie with like
Donnie
Keith
Wahlberg.
David. Yeah, Keith David's in it. That's a great example of a really low budget movie that should be bad, but because everyone just knows what it is and they're having fun, you have fun. This is a movie. It doesn't have any intrinsic value.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it a 2 as well.
It just needed to be more ridiculous and not like, what you're saying.
It needed
not
to be,
take
I
it
mean,
too
once you go to
seriously.
8 Raptors, you might as well just make the whole movie crazy, but it never gets crazy enough.
Yeah, I agree. Time travel rating.
So obviously the way that they time travel is through wormholes, but it's inconsistent on when they see the duplication and kind of that whole thing, and the whole time wave stuff is just dumb. So the only thing that's redeeming is the point when he stops the guy from stepping on the butterfly. He disappears. That's it. So 1 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to give it my time travel 2.5 out of 10. Mostly for your points, but I do think that I guess I like that they did try. It wasn't just, okay, they went once and then the rest is just effects of time travel. They do time travel multiple times. And I feel like a lot of times we just see, oh, it's a time travel movie. They time traveled once and then everything else just happens. So I like that they had to kind of continue to time travel, but there was way too many problems to kind of have it be good, consistent rules.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jen. I'm going to give it a 2.5 on the time travel because even though they don't stick to their rules a lot, and like at least they try to explain it, even if it's just for the page or for the moment. Like, oh, why am I strapped down? We don't want our atoms to get like mixed up. And it's like all of these in a better script or film would make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that time travel becomes a luxury thing to do, like for like a-holes to basically just go back in time and kill dinosaurs. I like that kind of cynicism towards time travel because so there's part of me that believes if time travel did become a commercial thing, it would only be used by a-holes to do really a-hole stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
I thought it would. One point that I made or that I mentioned to Matt when we were watching was I want to see a time travel movie where like anyone can time travel and see what the effects of that would be. Because it's always so, if time travel is something that people know about, it's so
like
exclusive. Yeah.
One
that, like,
group doing
what
it.
would happen, and like maybe that's not reasonable, but what would happen if anyone could time travel and, you know, everyone constantly had weird side effects, consequences of doing that? So
I mean, I want might be pretty harsh, you know, because you guys do make some good points, but I'll stick by it.
I feel you. No, I mean,
Yeah.
you
do you.
one is. I don't think it's harsh. I think it's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
so
I have to have some standards
Yeah.
from a science perspective, at least.
of course. So before I look at it, I want you guys to guess what you think the Rotten Tomatoes rating percentage is.
Like 20%.
Man, I hope it's not 20%. I hope it's lower. I hope it's like 10%.
It's 6%.
Oh, wow.
6%. Critics' consensus: choppy logic and uneven performances are overshadowed by not-so-special effects that make the suspension of disbelief a nearly impossible task.
Oh, I see. Okay, 6% of critics liked it, I guess, but the average rating is 2.8 out of 10. So
Yeah.
okay.
So there's 6 fresh, 92 rotten on this. I'm trying to find if I can find a fresh one. I'm just very curious what they say. There's plenty of room to poke holes in the premise, but folks willing to suspend disbelief can still have a good time. So, I disagree.
You need to suspend more than just disbelief for this movie.
Yeah. An exciting, uneven thriller that explores the ripple effect of altering one tiny moment. Okay, no, these
That's
people.
a top critic.
Yeah. No. Okay. 6%. Not that high. So our next movie is Matt's choice.
Our next movie is going to be Click, the Adam Sandler movie from 2006, with Kate Beckinsale and stuff. This is, we talked about this before, and you've probably seen it. It's a comedy. But yeah.
It's a fairly popular movie.
Yeah.
So our next one is Click. If you don't know about this movie, a workaholic architect finds a universal remote that allows him to fast forward and rewind to different parts of his life. Complications arise when the remote starts to overrule his choices. So that'll be a different kind of take on time. So that'll be
I
interesting.
saw the movie once, probably on DVD or something like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see it again, because I think it has like emotional stuff in it, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So our social media, we are at Time Travel Trio on Twitter and Instagram, and we are at the Time Travel Trio podcast on Facebook. We're also on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, so make sure to rate, subscribe, follow us on all of those. Personal social media, I'm at Jen Marlis on Twitter and Instagram.
I'm at Foreman in Space on those things.
And I'm at Robinson is Hyde.
And with that,
we are out of time.